Good morning. Wasn't a rhetorical question. 1,033 years ago, the first Icelandic merchant laid eyes on the North Atlantic coast of North America. Blown off course on a trip to visit his parents in Greenland, Bjarni Herjolfsson, grandson of one of the early Norse settlers of Iceland, with no map and no directions, lost his bearings in the wind and fog and missed Greenland completely. He pushed west for several days until the fog lifted and he set sight on a different coastline, one that was thickly wooded and laden with low, rolling hills. But intent on finding his parents back on Greenland, Herjolfsson ignored the interesting new landmass he had sighted and found safe harbor days later in his father's new land. Some years later, a young adventurer named Leif Erikson learned of the story, talked with Herjolfsson, bought his boat, in fact, and set out to find the strange lands that Herjolfsson had only seen from a distance. Looking for timber, Erikson eventually made land and established a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada. Today, a millennium later, we are not only reestablishing relations with the indigenous communities who inhabited our North American lands long before the Norsemen, we are also renewing our deep commitment to other lands, other cities, and other people of the North Atlantic region, including these people in this room, whose love of the ocean we share, the air we breathe, and the climate we are prepared to defend is unparalleled. Maine and the Arctic nations, separated by all that wind and fog so many years ago, are now connected by more than a few intrepid sailors. Today, I proudly lead the largest delegation ever from the state of Maine to this esteemed assembly. And they're all here. Business leaders, college presidents, researchers, policymakers, arts and cultural leaders, they come here because they understand that Maine is part of the Arctic Circle, that what happens in the Arctic Circle affects our state, and that the actions of our little state affect the Arctic Circle and the world. We are here, among other things, to renew and reinforce trade relationships with Greenland and the Scandinavian and other countries fortified by expanding shipping routes. We're pleased to partner with the oldest shipping company in Iceland, Eimskip, who recognizes the commercial advantages of Maine's deep ports and our location near both the Arctic and the population centers of Boston and New York. They have helped us transform an old facility on the Portland waterfront into a bustling port, linking our state irrevocably to worldwide markets. As a result, trade between Iceland and Maine increased more than 4,000% in one 2-year period, as East Coast businesses found new opportunities along the Green Line shipping route. Next year, Eimskip will directly connect Maine to Greenland, expanding opportunities for trade and collaboration in unprecedented ways. This sea route, forged by the explorers of our past and merchants of the present, is a reminder of how our communities can work together in the pursuit of a prosperous mutual future. Maine is poised to become the hub, the eastern gateway to the Arctic, a region whose allure we have shared since Portland-based explorer Robert Peary set foot on the North Pole in 1909. He did. My own virgin voyage to this country and to this assembly has opened my eyes to the basalt landscape that is otherworldly, to an edifice with honeycombed halls and 850 refracting prisms that shed the sharp light of reflection on 2,000 minds whose communal focus is the Arctic Circle. Here in Iceland, we're not that far from the rolling forested hills of my state, a state that juts out of the northeast corner of the United States, borders Canada, and bends towards Europe. A state that is 90% forested, with clean water, fertile farmlands, mighty rivers, and deep, deep ports. Did I say it had deep ports? Does Alaska have that? With 3,000 miles of bold, rocky, jagged coastline, my state is bathed by the same North Atlantic waters, the same rising, warming waves that lap the lava-laden shores of this very island. But it is more than ocean waters that draws us together. It is more than the cultural and economic currents of our shared fisheries, our academic institutions, or our trade in broccoli, mint chocolate, potatoes, lobsters, lumber, blueberries, and beer. I knew when I heard the Crown Princess of Sweden yesterday talk about flying over the Arctic to witness for herself the tragic and dramatic loss of glacial ice. I knew when I listened to the Premier of Greenland talk about the fish his people have caught for centuries, so many of which are now found with plastic particles in their stomachs. I knew when I met with President Grimson, who has awakened the whole world to the concerns of the Arctic Circle. I knew when I learned that the Gulf of Maine, my home waters, are warming faster than 99% of all ocean bodies. And when I heard from our fishermen that our lobsters are moving north and eastward into colder waters. And when I saw a devastating breed of insect migrate from warmer climates to attack and kill our iconic moose. I knew it is not just our ocean waters that draw us together. It is, as well, a vision of a future where nations trust one another, where we can accept science without polemic, where we can work in a solid front with a common goal and sometimes uncommon means for this imperative common purpose: to mitigate the disastrous effects of greenhouse gas emissions and global climate change on our natural resources, on our economy, on the health and very survival of our citizenry and our planet. And that is why I'm here today. My administration, my state, is committed to fighting climate change and mitigating its effects. In just 9 months, we have enacted strong, significant renewable standards. We are investing in clean energy and conservation, in electric vehicles and energy efficiency, community resiliency and sequestration of carbon in our soil and forests through sustainable forestry practices. And we will soon be offering you the most innovative floating offshore wind power systems in the world. In our small state of Maine, we now have a climate council made up of businesses, scientists, tribal members, youth representatives, lawmakers, and policymakers at all levels. We are putting our best minds together now to determine what we have to do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and cut our appetite for fossil fuels on which we have come to depend so much for heat, electricity, transportation. Maine this year also joined the bipartisan United States Climate Alliance, a coalition of 24 states and Puerto Rico, a coalition that is determined to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and combating climate change. And although the current administration in Washington intends to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords, we 25 states and territories represent 55% of the population of the United States and $11.7 trillion economy, an economic force. And we believe in climate change. We are committed to working with you to turn back this threat to the Arctic, this threat to our economy, this threat to the health and safety of our people, this threat to the world as we know it. A few weeks ago, I stood before the United Nations General Assembly and I promised the world that Maine will be carbon neutral by 2045. And we are taking steps every day to get there because that threat is on our doorstep. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns that if we do not take steps to reduce emissions and slow global warming, seas will rise 3 feet by the end of the century with fewer fish, less snow and ice, stronger and wetter hurricanes, and other violent weather systems. Our work has begun in earnest, and Maine is proud to follow in the footsteps of many of our Arctic nation neighbors. Trade and the environment and the new economy are inextricably intertwined. Our forest industry is following in Finland's footsteps as we transition from the shuttered paper mills to advanced manufacturing, high-quality tissue, packaging, biofuels, and the like. And the University of Maine has put us on the map for its commercial-scale production of nanocellulose, which is sent all over the world, which is finding uses as diverse as bone replacement material, nerve regeneration, and advanced building materials. And so just yesterday, I signed an agreement between the state of Maine and the Prime Minister of Finland for us to share forest research and sustainability practices in the face of a changing climate. As both of us depend so much on our forests, I know we can learn from Finland, and Finland can learn from us. Our fisheries and marine industries are also learning from the Arctic to meet the challenges of climate change. Iceland's ocean cluster house brings together more than 80 diverse fisheries and marine transportation industries to create new products, services, and companies, creating more sustainable and more profitable fisheries and marine enterprises. Following Iceland's lead, Maine will soon be home to the New England cluster house. This close collaboration between Arctic Circle members has fostered profitable ties between our business communities. It has spurred innovation and opened doors to new markets, research, and advancements. Whether built by sailors navigating shared seas, or students, industries, or ideas, music, or manufacturing, Maine is committed to strengthening the bond between our nations and regions as a true partner in the Arctic Circle Assembly. Maine is small, but fiercely determined. We know, as they say in Iceland, there are no problems, only solutions. Prime Minister Jakob Stoder said, "It can be an advantage to be small. You can do things bigger and faster. You can actually change everything in a small amount of time." As a state which has also changed much in a short amount of time, Maine knows firsthand we cannot wait for others to take the lead. 1,033 years ago, one merchant from Iceland passed us by. We will not let you go our way again by the northern shores of the Atlantic continent without your landing on our welcoming shores and without you remaining our friend forever. Wendell Berry told us, quote, "Hope then to belong to your place by your own knowledge of what it is that no other place is, and by your caring for it as you care for no other place." Bjarni Herjolfsson thought his place was Greenland. Today, our place is the entire Arctic Circle, our neighbor in destiny as well as in distance, a place which we must care for as we care for no other place in the world. Tak. Thank you.